Hello, in this tutorial we'll be looking at font properties that we can use with CSS. And in this tutorial I'm going to use two files. I've got my HTML file here and I've also got my stylesheet.css file here. So I'm using an external style sheet. So if you're not too sure what that means, then go and have a look at the previous tutorial on using external style sheets, because I'm going to be using an external style sheet to apply the font properties. Okay, so I've got a basic web page here. I'm using this stylesheet.css file, so I've referenced that here in the head section. And in the body section, I've got a couple of different size headings and then a couple of paragraphs. So to start with, I'm going to apply some I'm going to use some font properties for my paragraph. So I'm going to change the font type. I'm going to change the size of the font and the style of it. Okay, so there's a couple of ways that we can do this. First way is by using the P selector and then curly braces. We can put the font properties on individual lines. So we can start with something like font family, and we can use one of the web-friendly fonts, so we can use Arial. And then on the next line we can do something like font weight. Okay, and that could either be normal or we could use bold. Okay, so using this method, I'm basically putting the different properties on a new line. So I've got font family, font weight. I could then go on to add the font style and font size as well. But I'll save that and we'll have a quick look at what this looks like so far. Okay, so you can see that the two headings here are using the default font, which I think is Times New Roman. And here the two paragraphs are bold and they're using the Arial font. Okay, if I go back to my CSS and change font weight to normal, and I might change the font family, might pick something like Book Antiqua. Oops, something doesn't look right there. Maybe pick another one. Might pick Tahoma. There we go. So it's no longer bold. These two paragraphs are no longer bold, and now it's using the Tahoma font. Okay, so I've got font family, and you can pick from a number of web-friendly fonts, like there's a few serif fonts like Georgia, Palatino, lots of sans serif fonts like Arial, Helvetica, Comic Sans, if you really want to use that, Tahoma, Geneva, Trebuchet, Vidana, and then some monospace fonts like Courier New and Lucida Console. So lots of different fonts that you can choose from that are web friendly. If you want to use your own font that you've downloaded, then that's a little more complicated, and that will be in a later tutorial. So at the moment, we're just going to use some of these default fonts or web-friendly fonts that are included. Okay, so set the font family. We've set the font weight to, we've used normal and bold. There's also another way that we can adjust the font weight, and that's by using number values. So the number values range from 100 to 900. So 100 is thin and 900 is thick. If we use numbers, 400 is the equivalent of normal text, right? 700 is the equivalent of bold text. So if we have a look at that, refresh, that's now bold, okay? So 700 is the equivalent of bold. 900 is the equivalent of bolder. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can see any difference there, but basically you can use the values 100 to 900, and that's thin to thick. So you can adjust the boldness there using numbers. Or you can just use normal or bold. Okay, or you can also use bolder as well. And I think you can use lighter too. So you could use lighter, normal, bold, bolder, or you can use the number values. Okay, might leave that normal. All right, so we've got the font family, we've got the font weight. We can also change the font style. So we can either have italic or we can have normal for that. All right, now you don't have to put font style in. This is optional, but if you want to have italic, then you can specify that here. Okay, so now that's italic, and I've also removed the bold, so you can see it's no longer bold. And then another one that we'll look at is font size. Okay, now there's two ways we can do this. We can specify in pixels, so we can put 12px for pixels. Okay, so it makes it 12 pixels, or we can use 12 points. Okay, so we could make it bigger. Again, maybe we'll go 24 pixels. All right, so it's much bigger, and 24 point. All right, so you can make that as big as you want, really. But that is how you change the font size, okay? So either using px or pt. You can also use percentage values as well for the font size, but I'm going to put that at about 12 point, okay? It's about the default. All right, so we've got font family, we've got font weight, font style, font size. What else could we add? Well, there's one way that we can improve this. One thing that we can actually do is we can actually add the line height as well. And we can also specify font variant. So first one we'll have a look at is font variant. Okay, now font variant you can either have as normal, which is just normal text, or you can change it to small caps. Now what small caps looks like is it will make this text uppercase. Okay, so it's changed the paragraph text to uppercase. And notice that the font size has also changed because I updated that. So font variant you can have as normal or you can have as small caps if you want. I'll change that back to normal, or I can just completely leave that out, seeing it's normal. That'll be the default value if you don't specify it. And then the last one we'll have a look at is line height. Okay, so line height you can specify as either normal or you can put in some number values. So I think the default value is about 1.2 for line height. Okay, but you could increase that. So you could say something like 3. All right, and that basically changes the line height or the spacing between each line. But the default is somewhere around about 1 or 1.2, I think. So that's another one that you can fiddle with. But if you're not going to change any of these values, then you can leave those ones out. They're optional. So we can just have things like font family, font weight, font style, and font size. Those are going to be the main ones that we'll be working with. Okay, but it starts to take up a lot of room if you do it this way. So we've got the properties on individual lines, but we can actually put the properties on one line. Okay, so to do that, we'll get rid of all of this here. And instead of having it all on individual lines, we can just use the font property. With the font property, we can specify everything on one line. So we could say italic, bold, 14, or maybe 12 point for the size. And for the font family, we might pick Georgia. Okay, now notice I'm just typing these separated with a space. So I'm not separating these with any commas or any semicolons or anything like that. Just using spaces to separate them. So I can save that, and I can go back and refresh my page. And now this is Georgia, It is size 12 point. It's in italic and it's also in bold. So we can use the font property to specify everything on one line. So all of those values can be specified on one line. Now, a few important things to note here. So the font style, font variant, which we haven't actually specified here, but if you want to specify that, you could put that in here. But the font style, font variant, the font weight, if those values are there, they must be before the font size. So they have to come before the font size value, okay? And then if you're specifying the line height value, then that must be defined immediately after the font size value. And it's preceded by a mandatory / character, okay? And then the font family, that's mandatory, and it must be the last value that's defined. So it has to be the last value that's defined, all right? So here, we haven't specified everything. We've just got the font style, we've got the font weight, font size, and then we've got the font family. But it's important to note the font size and the font, so font size and the font family are required, so they're mandatory. The font family needs to be at the end, and these things like the font style and font weight have to come before the font size. Okay, font variant also has to come before the font size. So we could say something like small caps. Okay, if we wanted to change the font variant there, but that's optional. You don't have to specify that. Also, you could change the line height, but if you're going to change the line height, then that must, so say something like 3.5, then that must come after the font size, okay, and you must have that preceded by a / character. All right, so that's how to add the CSS information for the font all on one line using the font property. Another quick thing that we'll talk about is using CSS comments. So the CSS comments, we can add extra information to a CSS file or a style sheet, and it can just be information about the style sheet. So maybe what theme this is, or what section of a website it might be applied to. It might just include information about the person who made it, or the date it was made, or anything like that. Or just information about what the selectors are going to be used for, so which sections of a web page. So a CSS comment, if you've done some JavaScript coding, is the same as a JavaScript multi-line comment. So it starts with a / and a star. And notice that it's already grayed out everything here. So it's made everything on this page a comment. It's graded out. So we need to actually end that comment with a star and a /. So now everything inside these two, these lines here with the / and the star and the /, everything between there will be a comment. Okay. So you could add information about that, like you know, what theme this is, or what part of the website this is being applied to, or you could, just to remind yourself what all of this is here on this line, you could specify the order that everything is happening in. So you could say font style, font weight, font size, oops, typo. We'll get rid of that line height because we don't really need that. And we could say font family, and then just end that off there. Okay, so that's a comment. And if we go back to the page, now just note that I just changed the line height there, but if we go back to this page, you can see that none of this information here is actually visible on the page. So it's not actually going to be included on the page, it's just hidden in your CSS file, and so it's just information that you can include inside a CSS file about, you know, what's going on in a particular line, or maybe what this CSS file is going to be used for. Okay, so today we've looked at font properties. We've looked at how to specify font properties on individual lines in an external style sheet. And we've also looked at using the font property to specify all the information on one line and how to use comments in a CSS file. Thanks for watching.